Good afternoon, and welcome to the September 4th, 2024 informal board meeting of the Savannah-Chatham County Board of Public Education. This is an informal meeting. This is an information meeting only. We do not take any votes during this meeting, and we're going to jump right into it. And our first we'll cover strategic priority 1, student growth and achievement for choice-filled futures, school attendance. Ms. May.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for allowing me to present to all of you today on student attendance. This is an exemplar of our strategic plan in action, and the data covered will be from school year 23-24, so the previous school year. This is aligned with strategic priority 1, which focuses on student growth and achievement for choice-filled futures. Specifically, we are looking at performance objective D, providing high-quality support and services for whole child development. The focus of today's presentation is on the KPI aimed at decreasing student absenteeism as measured by student record. It's important to really take a look at student attendance, not only from our district standpoint, but from the national level. There has been a lot of attention that has been given to student attendance and what has happened in the post-pandemic era. The U.S. Department of Education provides key statistics and takeaways that are really critical for all of us to understand in taking a look at the district's student attendance. 1 out of every 10 kindergartners and first grade students are chronically absent. Absenteeism in the first month of school can predict poor attendance throughout the remaining school year. Poor attendance can influence whether children read proficiently by the end of 3rd grade or whether they are held back. By 6th grade, chronic absence becomes a leading indicator that a student will drop out of high school. As such, on May 15th of 2024, the White House called a number of individuals together and held the Everyday Count Summit to address the need to take concerted action to address attendance and cultivating a culture of attendance. A key takeaway from that summit is that school connectedness is as close as we have to a universal prevention measure. You have to believe there's an adult who knows and cares about you as a person. This is where we as a nation have to double down. Given the focus on chronic absenteeism, one of the things that was highlighted in context of this summit and through the work of the Everyone Graduates Center at Johns Hopkins University is due to various studies that were held across the nation, various school districts. They have arrived at 4 main categories which reflect the common reasons that students are chronically absent. The first of those are barriers. Barriers are any challenge or challenges such as older students having to care for their younger siblings or take jobs, and the lack of transportation to school. So these are significant obstacles to students being able to attend school regularly. Aversion. Students don't want to go to school due to various factors such as social anxiety, which is particularly true for students who took online courses, became accustomed to that online, non-face-to-face modality during those key transitional or developmental years. So this was particularly noticeable in children who were transitioning from elementary to middle school or from middle school to high school during the pandemic. Another category is disengagement. disengagement reflects students lacking a connection to peers and adults at school, or a lack of understanding how or why their coursework is relevant to them personally. So they don't see that connection either interpersonally or to the work at hand within the schoolhouse. Misconceptions round out the fourth main category or reason for chronic absenteeism. So these are assumptions that are often held by parents, either that students should be kept at home for any minor illness, any sniffle is enough to keep the child at home, or a perception held by either parents and or students that in-person classes are not all that important because students always have the opportunity to make up work later. So with these reasons, it's really important to think about those elements that both keep our children engaged and focused on school and wanting to be at school day to day versus those barriers, those various reasons why they may opt to be absent. When it comes to state accountability metrics, what we find is that the readiness component of the College and Career Ready Performance Index contains student attendance as a measure, as a salient indicator, obviously, and the one that we're focused on today. So student attendance per CCRPI is computed as the percentage of students absent less than 10% of enrolled days. So it's really important to hone in on what this calculation means, because enrolled days includes both the days students are present plus those days they are absent. So the formula itself has the days absent, total number of days absent across the school year, over the days present plus the days absent. That's how we get that percentage. So in looking at our district data, we thought it was important to not only show you the previous academic year's data, but a 3-year comparison, so comparing 2022, 23, and 24 data. Once again, note this reflects the percentage of students absent less than 10% of enrolled days. And what we see is that we seem to have plateaued since 23 at 74%. There was a slight increase from school year 22 as we were coming out of the pandemic, and it has stabilized at 74%, which reflects the average district attendance. We also wanted to take a closer look at what attendance looks like across our 3 grade bands. So we split the grade bands into K through 5, the middle grades, grades 6 through 8, and then high school, grades 9 through 12. And we did that same comparison for you for school years 2022, 2023, and 2024. So when you reflect upon this data, what you see is that we do have gains with regard to attendance in grades K through 5 and 6 through 8. So there are increases in students attending daily. However, where we do see a slow decline is in the high school grades. So for grades 9 through 12, we had 57% of our students meeting the computational formula for student attendance, whereas we had 80% of our middle grade students and 82% of students in grades K through 5 attending regularly. Any questions with regard to that year-over-year comparison? Seeing none, we will now proceed.
Thank you, Dr. May.
I'm sorry.
I didn't
Ms.
realize,
Hall.
Doctor, that you were finishing up for you, so I do have a question for your part.
Yes, ma'am.
I wonder, with the high school being the poorest showing, if a ninth grader tends to be absent much more than, say, an 11th grader. As you get closer to finishing, does your attendance pick up, or, you know,
So-
is there no difference?
That reflects the overall per that grade band. We can do a further breakdown by grades for you in a
Well,
supplemental report.
That's just curiosity, you know, just wondering if, but.
We see a little variability, but generally, it's around that same level.
Okay. One thing I remember, this attendance situation has not just become a problem.
Yes, ma'am.
Back in, say, 2005, when I was a principal, I decided for the first semester of school, I just think that the earlier you do a intervention, the better. So since I had a K-5 elementary,
Yes.
we did competitions. Every day, the homeroom class that had the perfect attendance, a representative would come to the office, and what would they get? A certificate. But it was amazing to me how you would see kids telling other kids, don't be absent. It was a self-generating thing, and all it was a competitive, who has the homeroom with the perfect attendance. So if principals just, you know, kind of use their imaginations a bit.
Ma'am.
Of course, you can't do that with high schoolers, and probably can't even do it in middle school, but those little kindergarten, first, second, and getting them in the habit,
Right.
that seems to be something that carries on through your life if you get used to coming to school every day.
And that friendly competition to spur them all to achieve greater. Absolutely, and that's a wonderful transition to focusing on the key strategies for this year.
Dr. Howard Hall.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I would like to really see the difference when it comes to seniors
Yes,
as
ma'am.
opposed to the 9th, 10th, and 11th graders.
Yes.
Because many times seniors, they have half days. They've completed all their coursework.
Correct.
And they have jobs. So that'd be interesting to see just how, and also athletes.
Yes.
Usually when you have athletes, they have to meet certain criteria with extracurricular activities as
Correct.
well, so.
And one thing, too, that I should note with regard to high school in particular, please understand that with regard to their days, of course, that is broken up by periods. So in order for a student to be marked absent for the entire day, that student must be present at least 50% of that time. So 50% of those periods have to be attended in order for the student to count towards the CCRPI metric.
And does this data transfer, say, for example, alternative schools when students are absent? Does it reflect their home school?
So in the report that we provided, you'll see the breakdown per school. And when it comes to, so with regard to high schools, you can see the variability from high school to high school. E-learning, but in terms of the program specific, we would have to provide that in a follow-up report.
That data is reported back to the home school.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Smith.
Thank you for that presentation. Let me ask you just a quick question. Out of, when we look at the in-school suspension and
Yes.
things of that nature, how are they calculated into this?
So,
In school or out of school?
so
Suspension.
those are typically not counted in the context of this particular, so the excused absences versus unexcused absences would be those that are owned by the student. So that is excluded from this computation.
Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll keep Dr. Mayer around as well for any additional data-related questions, but I'm happy to answer as well. Also have key members of our student support team here as well for additional questions and discussion. As we move forward, I want to reiterate that addressing absenteeism across our district will perhaps require a shift, a continued shift in how we improve attendance outcomes, continuing to move towards a more holistic and integrated approach. This means not just looking at our attendance data, but also, as Dr. May indicated, understanding the factors behind it and working together, schools, families, and community, to ensure our students are present and engaged. And I want to emphasize again, working together, our students, families, and the community to ensure our students are present and engaged. So as we continue to assess in our district our current priority challenges, we've identified 5 core opportunities. And as the data indicated and Dr. May shared with you, we must give special attention to our high school students who continue to show the lowest attendance rates across our district. Our high schools face unique challenges, and while there are many factors contributing to the attendance data, our approach, which is holistic, is really important. And as we provide targeted support to schools that have more challenges. Please know that we'll be working diligently, and I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge Ms. Hall. I appreciate you sharing your story regarding our K-5 grade band. We certainly will be committed to that work as well in our middle schools to ensure that those students stay engaged and supported. We are providing resources, particularly in those early grades, to help communicate the importance of consistent attendance, and you saw that referenced in those main factors. And these early interventions, as you've noted, will be key to establishing school and lifelong habits of attending school regularly. I did want to capture our first key action and core opportunity to address high school absenteeism, and you'll hear me reference high school quite frequently throughout the remaining of this presentation. You'll also note on the presentation there is an emphasis with the asterisk HS, as that is one of the key actions that we'll prioritize in our approach. But one of our first key actions to address high school and really absenteeism is our district-wide Miss School, Miss Out campaign that was launched last year, and we'll be bolstering that this year. And this is really specifically designed to highlight the importance of attendance and bring awareness to, again, students, families, and the community about how much is at stake when students miss school. All right. For our younger students, that's important. It's for our parents of our young scholars, that's equally important. And we know that those missing school can have a long-term impact. I do want to, again, emphasize that we'll be prioritizing many of our key tactics and actions to improve attendance for our high school students. And you'll notice here there's one particular area, organizing family engagement, and let me just say partnership opportunities focused on improving attendance outcomes. Often we think of family engagement at our lower grade bands, but we'll be really supporting our schools on what does that look like to facilitate and partner with our parents and providing them with those resources. Parent advocacy, alignment, and action are really essential to, again, improving attendance outcomes. I'll talk a little bit more about the attendance awareness campaign and what you see here regarding our attendance suite. But I want to put that in the context of our attendance team supports. And these teams that are school-based teams are required by law to meet weekly. But what we'll be doing is providing tiered support to those schools based on their data to ensure that they are equipped with the resources from our district support. This includes our social workers. As you can see, we'll be expanding their role to ensure that they're able to provide support. But we'll also be supporting our schools in developing their own school action plans. You see here this note of RISE, really the focus, and again for them, a holistic approach, responsibility and partnership with our families, involving students in their school experience, focusing on student-centered needs, and engagement for all. So their plans and their approach will be include those components. We'll be, as I indicated to you, expanding the role of our social workers who play a pivotal role. At the same time, we'll continue to build upon the foundation in our elementary and middle schools. While we saw some increases, we know that it's important to continue that momentum And so attendance teams will be supported at our elementary and middle schools as well from our district support group. But I do want to emphasize this as well. Again, this is continuing with our shift from a singular approach to a more holistic approach. And one of such shifts is our shift from what was formerly known as our truancy sweeps, which are now known as our attendance sweeps, which gives it a different, I'll say, vibe and focus, but it's really designed to engage with more students and in a different way. So I wanted to emphasize that we're excited about the opportunity that Dr. Watts and some of our other community members will be a part of as we, again, take a collective approach to doing that. Our third core opportunity is student well-being. And so just want to emphasize again at the high school level, we'll be maximizing the impact of our high school counselors and the support that they provide. We know that our counselors provide resources, and we know that when we look at the ratio of students to counselors, that sometimes is a challenge. So we'll be positioning them with additional resources to make sure that we're prioritizing the emotional and mental well-being of our students. We'll be prioritizing and promoting the services through our Wellness Center, through our existing partnerships with Curtis Cooper, Apex, again, removing barriers to attendance. You'll also notice, again, promoting student participation and that student school experience, particularly our CTSOs and our school clubs, providing opportunities for our students to connect. And again, while often our approach may have been isolated, our goal here is to really integrate, and I want to capture for you here as we close in just a moment what that looks like in terms of student impact. Our fourth core opportunity, and this one is really essential to improving attendance outcomes. We're really strengthening our focus on the consistency of authentic engagement experiences for all of our students, and in particular for our high school students. We know that that relevant, engaging experience and real-world connection is important. So you'll see, you note here, we'll be bolstering our CTAE and STEM and STEAM learning experiences and being very intentional in what that looks like at the high school, supporting our attendance support teams so that they're able to provide that support to individual students, but also to parents as well. One of the other pieces that I want to highlight on this core opportunity is the reimagining our virtual learning. You heard Dr. May talk about one of the misconceptions or one of the barriers for our high school students who often indicate that if I can do it online, my teacher has provided that assignment there, or I'll make up the assignments when I return. That is a common story and a personal story for many of us. But as we think about how our teachers leverage the instructional technology in a way that complements the in-person instruction so that it does not replace and so that students see the need to be present and engage on a daily basis. But we also want to make sure that we're maximizing what that looks like, right? So that will be an important part of the work that we do in terms of supporting students and schools. Again, I've emphasized high schools, but I want to at least acknowledge here in this particular area for our younger scholars, we'll continue to focus on student-centered experiences and really that focus on early literacy and numeracy, again, recognizing that those things certainly impact and improve our attendance outcomes. Finally, as part of our integrated approach, our opportunity that we have at the policy level will be to really review some of our attendance practices that is really embedded within the attendance teams and the district support that will be provided. So we'll be very intentional in what that looks like to ensure that we are operating appropriately, but also we'll be looking at promotion and retention and the impact of that. And then, again, as I mentioned to you with regards to the attendance teams, that will be those attendance practices. And I'll just note one thing. When we talk about the consistency of attendance practices and the support, it could be as simple as those school practices around taking attendance, which could be one of the things that impacts a school in terms of their attendance data. Sometimes we think of these large things, but it could just be simply helping schools improve some of their attendance taking processes. So I shared with you before a story, and I just simply want to capture the impact of what that means in terms of an integrated approach and a wraparound support. So Jordan's a junior in high school. He's bright, but he's been missing more school because of family responsibilities and taking care of younger siblings. And he also has a part-time job that he really likes. He enjoys earning the money. His mother's working long hours. And so that has been a barrier for him in attending school regularly and on time. And as you might imagine, he's fell behind on his coursework. And as a result, he's also feeling more disengaged from school. So once the school notices his absences and tardies, Jordan connects with the high school attendance team. This team, as I shared with you, includes social workers, counselors, school administrators, teachers, who work with not only Jordan, but they partner with the parent to ensure they have access to resources, to communicate the importance of regular attendance, and to help them see what that means in terms of the future for him. As a result, we start to see his attendance improve. He's no longer worried about his responsibilities at home as much. The school attendance team has partnered and contacted, and I've done this as well, his part-time employer and said, hey, listen, we want to make sure that Jordan is on track to graduate, and so we want to partner with you to make sure that his work schedule is indeed manageable. And then finally, through the district's Miss School, Miss Out campaign, Jordan and his mother are reminded that, and because it's everywhere, letters, flyers, it's all in the community, this campaign, right, how important school is for long-term success, particularly as he approaches graduation. So Jordan's attendance improved, and with the help of additional school counseling support, he not only catches up with his coursework, he's reconnected with his peers. In fact, he has joined the STEM club, and he is now that much more engaged in school. And he has renewed purpose and direction for his future after high school. So while our team is committed to improving attendance numbers, it's this attendance narrative that we hope to change. Again, it's not a singular approach, but an integrated approach to the work. And it's a collective commitment with students, our schools, our families, and our community for us to yield those desired results. So at this time, we'll certainly open the floor to questions.
Okay, before we have any questions, Dr. Watts had a couple of other points to make.
Thank you, Mr. Butler and Dr. May, for your presentation. Just a couple of things that I'd like to highlight as it relates to this subject. First and foremost, I want to say it does not fall short on me and others the role that transportation in our district could be contributing. You don't see it necessarily in this report, but we know that that could be a contributing factor. If kids are, the bus is late and I'm standing in the rain, I may just go back home and not attend for the day. So I wanted to highlight that. Secondly, I wanted to say that our current policies as written value grades, not seat time, which is in conflict with the way the state holds us accountable. So our current policies are written in such a way that if a student's grades are good, they pass a test at the end of the year, those are two big factors that a school would be looking at. Regardless of the number of days a student misses, he or she could be promoted. So we don't have a policy that supports X number of days. We have an accountability system that values seat time, but we have internal policies that value grades. And so those things are in conflict. And then the last thing I will say is I have done an extensive amount of research on this topic as well, given that I had a student in our school system last year. The number one factor that all the research speaks to in terms of increasing student attendance is the relationship they have with a teacher or some other trusted adult in a school. So our efforts at the district level are robust. I'm very proud of all the strategies that you just heard about, extremely proud of all of them, and we will execute them to the highest level of fidelity. But it will take a community, and it will take the relationship cultivation that we have in each classroom, in the hallways, that our students are seen and they experience a sense of belonging. And that is really the way that the research and the data proves out how we will increase student attendance. So I thought it was just important for me to highlight those things.
Ms. Hall, Mr. Kachmar,
I don't want to simplify this
Dr. Hall.
too much, but human connection is so important. As she said, yes, the adult to the child, but if a teacher is just not bright enough, noticing these things, if there's an assignment and I have to work with Denise to get it done, we're partnering, and Denise tends to come to school every day. I don't, but we're partnering on this project. Just that human connection with her, that she's relying on me for us to get the project done, is going to put a little more emphasis on me to, oh, I need to be there because Denise is depending on me for us to get this project done. So it's not always big, grand things or research. It's just, thinking through, how do I engage this kid? And a peer engagement, to me, is right underneath that importance of adult to child, to have that other kid waiting on me to get there so we can get our grade. So.
Thank you for the nuanced and pragmatic approach to addressing this challenge. I fully agree with your comments, Dr. Watts. All I would ask is that the easy answer is to do a one-size-fits-all policy review and revision. When we were discussing what type of school district we wanted to be in terms of strategic waivers or charter system or whatever, one of the big discussion points was the state mandates seat time and number of days in school. And one of the reasons back then we selected the approach we did was for more flexibility in seat time and days of instruction, particularly because some kids do fine, coming to school once a month, otherwise doing work online or whatever, and others need the human connection on a daily or weekly basis. So as we move forward looking at our policies, what I heard today was this is not a policy issue. It's a little bit of a policy issue. It's an action and operations issue. Like, we need to engage these kids, talk to them, talk to their support networks, et cetera. And I fully agree with that. And I'm not opposed to changing whatever our policies are. We just need to be flexible because some kids don't need the day-to-day touch as much as others.
Derek, I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot here, but aligned to Mr. Kashmar's statement, you and I have spent a lot of time talking about how do we define attendance. So right now, attendance is defined as you come to school and you sit in a seat and you do seat time. But we also have virtual learning. And when we have e-learning days across the district, as long as a kid logs in, they are counted as I attended school today. But we don't, currently, that practice is not leveraged at the extent I think it can be leveraged to identify or redefine attendance. So, Mr. Butler, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot or letting the cat out of the bag too early, but can you talk a little bit about what we're aspiring to?
Certainly, and I'll say what we are exploring is how we provide clarity for our schools and even for our parents what non-traditional participation looks like. And certainly there are some strategies that we have begun to put in place to sort of position our teachers to utilize in technology in a way that allows for our students to engage. While we certainly have CELA, while we have twilight. We know that schools and individual classrooms use technology on a daily basis. But what we want to do is we want to take advantage of and allow our students and our families to take advantage of those non-traditional learning opportunities in a more structured way. But we know that we have to put some systems in place to make sure that our schools and our families are able to maximize that opportunity. So currently, when Dr. Watts talked about the e-learning day, students are coded present if they indeed participated in the learning experience. So we're exploring how can we expand that on non-e-learning days that are optional for parents with some structures, but also some limitations on how many times they can take advantage of that. So that's just a little bit of what we're exploring because we have that ability and we've already done that in a more formal district-wide way through our e-learning.
I appreciate that clarification, and I'm going to summarize my view, which I think is what you're saying. I would prefer we start with maximum flexibility and trust within guardrails, and the kid loses that privilege if they don't meet certain basic requirements, as opposed to a very strict, here's the rule and that's it. That would be my preference. I'm one board member.
Ms.
Thank you for that
Grabowski?
feedback.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for the clarification. One of the notes I made was about Brightspace. I hear lots of grumbling about Brightspace, so I don't know if as a part of that, and I know we have a contract and so forth, but I know as a part of that reimagining, if there might be opportunities to evaluate that platform, that might help engaging. One of the questions I've asked when we talked about this before, and I think Dr. May, you shared it was a pretty low number, and it's not something I'm asking for right now, but obviously coming out of the pandemic, there was very much a mindset of if you have a sniffle, stay home. And I think we could see that continuing. So I'd be curious if we have a sense of how much of our absenteeism is related to sick days. So I don't know if we have it broken down in that way or not. I think when I asked before, the response was we really don't. Is that correct?
That is accurate. Given the nature of the data, and it's really not only related to sick days, but also the question asked earlier by Dr. Howard Hall regarding those students who are in our alternative programs. When you look at it at a per school and per individual incident type level, we run into very small sample sizes.
Right.
So then we run the risk of PII, and sometimes that granular level data is not easily accessible. So we have the overall absence.
And
Well,
remembering that it's also contingent upon the parent to
Right.
give us that
Yes.
information. One of the new things that we do have this year is that parents, instead of sending paper notes that might get in the bottom of a book bag or wherever, they can go into Power School. But that will allow us potentially to be able to capture, but I don't think the state differentiates, so it doesn't,
They do
whether
not.
it's a sick,
No.
a
It's
sick
just-
excuse or unexcused, it's
Exactly.
an absence.
Yes.
Right, and I understand that, and the state may not differentiate, but it might help us
Sure.
in understanding what those, areas are, and it's another reason to help keep our kids healthy. So a couple of follow-up questions. During the pandemic, I know we relaxed a lot of our attendance policies. Am I remembering correctly that once upon a time prior to that, there was a correlation between attendance and advancement?
I don't have that history.
Yeah, I know you don't, does that sound,
So when you say advancement,
To the next grade.
promotion?
yes.
So there is, in our current policy, the attendance waiver process. So it does read in a general sense that, students must attend school regularly. And if they miss X amount of days, they must submit an attendance waiver.
Okay.
And the attendance team reviews that to determine if the student should be promoted or retained.
Okay.
So there's some of that language that exists in the current attendance policy.
And are we currently enforcing that policy?
So that is part of the
Or
work
is that
that we'll
part of
be
what you're
doing
doing? Okay.
as we work with attendance teams
Okay.
to ensure, because essentially our attendance teams, they do that on a regular basis. in terms of monitoring students and the number of days. But yes, some of our schools are indeed following and using the attendance waiver process. However, we'll be working with some of our schools to make sure that that's happening more consistently.
Okay, because I did have a teacher, express frustration that, she had lost what little stick she had because that was not being utilized during that time as far as.
Sure we
Yeah.
clarify for the general public and for ourselves. Our policy does not currently say if you miss X number of days, you
Correct.
will be retained. That is not what the
Not that
policy
clear, yeah.
says. What the policy says is if you miss days, there's a committee that will get together. You will submit a waiver, and if that committee feels like your lack of attendance contributes to a reason why you need to be retained, the committee can go that route. But the committee is encouraged to look at multiple factors. And so if you're a committee member and you're looking and you say a kid has missed 22 days, but the kid's a straight A student, it is less likely that that student would end up being retained.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that there's clarity that our policy does not favor seat time. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the best way I know to say it.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, but it sounds like that's part of what you're exploring. So two other quick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'll make it quick. So one of the things we hear from our employers is the need for students who've recently graduated to be there on time and have a good attendance record. Is there a way that through our graduation process, we can have extra recognition or, how, is there a way to capture that as our students are going out into the workplace, say, hey, look, I had 95% attendance all throughout 12 years of school? Because to me, as an employer, that would be really attractive to know that that is someone who's committed to their responsibilities.
So I'd like to ask Dr. Miller-Fields to respond regarding our district approach to attendance incentives. So if you
Good afternoon, everyone. And let me first say this. This is a perfect time to be giving this report because in the event that you do not know, September is Attendance Awareness Month. So we are saturating our community with flyers and information. We want everybody to know in our viewing and listening audience that we have started our attendance campaign, and we are very serious, we are very intentional and deliberate in our efforts to improve attendance. And now your question to me, Mr. Butler, was?
So I prepared her, so she already had her,
I was
opening
ready.
statement prepared.
Yes, representing Savannah-Chatham County Public Schools.
Attendance incentives.
Yes, as Mr. Butler alluded to earlier, we do have a district attendance support team. And that attendance support team does two things. We look introspectively, we look at ourselves. We go around and we do things within our school system. And then we are garnering support from our community partners as well. And I'll share a spotlight with you as well. So we are offering incentives. We're doing it at every grade band, elementary, K-8, and high school as well. We're doing things not only for our students, but we're also offering incentives for our teachers. And we are considering doing something for our parents as well. Because at the elementary level, students can't get to school unless what? Parents send them. So we are incentivizing attendance holistically. And there are a myriad of attendance incentives that we can share with you at a later point. I do want to mention to you just today, on the heels of coming to board meeting, because we are saturating ourselves and our community with this attendance awareness campaign, we, the Savannah-Chatham County Public School System, got contacted by one of our community partners, Garden City Police Department. And because of our efforts, they are going to be offering incentives to our West Side schools. We are very excited. That just came out of a community meeting we had, and she reached out to me today, the lieutenant at Garden City. So again, the word is getting out. Incentives are being offered, and they're going to do it for students who have had one unexcused absence. They'll be offering goodie bags, so more to come. So our word is getting out there, so we're excited about the partnership, about messaging, and we're also excited about the incentives that we're offering.
Yeah, it was really more related to getting a job after college, but we can sidebar about that later. And one last thing, and then I'll be quiet, I promise. How are our students being engaged in this process and providing their feedback as to what would bring them to school? Because to me, that's the most important voice, is understanding why our students want to be in
Yeah,
school. How about I know?
absolutely. I appreciate that question. So that is part of the work that the district attendance team. So not only getting feedback from students, but also feedback and surveys from our administrators, our teachers on what their existing challenges are. But to your point, with regards to students, we'll be doing some surveys that will be taking place district-wide, but also will be as we work with individual schools through the attendance team process. We'll be asking individual schools to collect some of that information from their student body as well, because I think that's important.
I hope we'll consider something like focus groups and not just surveys.
Yes,
a little-
yes.
little-
So the survey's district-wide, but through the attendance teams, there'll be some small focus groups that happen.
Okay, Dr. Howard Hall, then Mr. Smith, then Ms. Hall.
Yes, thank you. As a former classroom teacher some decades ago, there was a promotion policy, and you had to have multiple criteria, and one of those criteria was attendance, and it was based on excused, absentees, and unexcused. So with everything going on, especially our barriers that we are faced with today, can we redefine excused, absentee, and unexcused? It used to be years ago when you were ill, but now we know that transportation is now an issue and other different barriers. So we might need to take you don't have to answer it now, but take a look at redefining what excused absentee is versus unexcused.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you for your presentation. Quick question for you. When we look at the push or the start of the push for attendance, when we first had that big push and that campaign, can you tell me if we were able to identify an increase in attendance as a result? And I'm not speaking about over the year, but immediately after, we'll be able to see an increase in that window. I imagine that maybe it fell off by this time, but at the initial start, did we see an increase?
I'm not able to speak to that in terms of the data. So what I will say, though, as part of that launch, and one of the things that happened was so we highlighted schools that had very strong attendance teams and processes, and we were able to gather some best practices to share with other schools. And so what we did see were schools actually begin to plan and develop and strengthen their attendance team support processes. But I'm not able to speak to if that yielded here within that short amount of time the results in terms of attendance outcomes.
I'll add that my experience last year and my first year was that collectively as a cabinet, we were not looking at data to know month by month, every 3 months, every quarter, what attendance looked like. I don't even think I knew where to go get the data if I needed it. But this year, I have made it clear to our principals and clear to our team that bi-monthly, I will be looking at attendance data, and we will be monitoring that as a part of our strategic plan extended cabinet work, so that as we meet as an extended cabinet, we are looking at the data, unpacking and codifying successes, but also looking at where there are continued barriers. You can't wait till the end of the year and see the number. Again, that's the autopsy. I can't do anything about 57% last year at the high school. Last year is gone. I can do something about it if I see that same trend in October of this year. We can then begin to make pivots and changes to impact the data. So for me, it's about building in that frequency of monitoring and action orientation. So what are we going to do? We see a number's not moving in the direction, we can't wait till the end.
And one additional comment to your question is, while we can't quantify it in data, we can quantify it in terms of awareness and community buy-in. Because we started that, more community members are saying, hey, I want to be a part of this attendance campaign. I want to see what I can do as a community to help you, because we cannot do all the work in isolation, we being the Savannah-Chatham County Public School System. But we are so grateful for all of our community partners. So what it did do is increase awareness and buy-in and collaboration from our community partners.
Okay, Ms. Hall, and then Dr. Ringman and Mr. Johnson. Okay.
Okay, just very quickly, Dr. Watts, even though technology has, changed our lives so much, I still see school as a socialization institution. And I was just reading in the Atlantic, there is an epidemic of loneliness in this country at all age levels. And one of the things that I feel coming to school and making a friend does is to build a barrier against that alienation and loneliness. So even though, like you said, we are in the virtual world and all of that, there's nothing like coming and saying, oh, I made a friend at school today. So I just want us to keep that human element in as we go forward.
Absolutely.
Dr. Brinkman?
I'm going to start with thanking you for this work, thanking the district for this work, because we're a public school system. Our primary thing is to teach, and this is yet another thing that we are having to tackle that really we shouldn't have to tackle. Students should just come to school. But thank you to your team. I'm sure there are teachers that are on that team at each school, that this is an extra duty assigned to them to go and make the calls to the Jordan, which is wonderful. And I applaud all of those efforts. It, to me, just unhinges me on another thing that the school system is now having to try to correct that, like you said, needs to be a community thing, needs to be whoever is raising that child, if they are fortunate to have someone raising them, to get them to school. So thank you for that. Thank you, thank you. And none of my comments that I'm about to make are any pointing fingers at all. So please do not take them that way. We keep talking about transportation. Your March 6th report that you gave us, that was the last time you visited us, clearly states that that transportation probably isn't the issue, because all the schools that are 100% choice, and that means everybody has to get their own self there, except the ones that might be on an IEP or a 504 or might be districted there. They're all our top performers. Some of them still aren't performing well, but they're all our top performers. Garrison, I think, was the only school on the correct side of the red line. Oh, sorry, and Savannah Early College. And Savannah Arts, barely over the red line at 10%. STEM, barely over the red line. And Garrison was below. So those people have to provide transportation to get to their school, and they're there. All of our home schools, abysmal, especially at what you're saying, the high school level. So I don't know if it's a transportation thing. We can still solve that, but I don't think that's going to solve our attendance issue at these schools. I think Ms. Hall, to some degree, is hitting on it, and we talked about it at our workshop. It's these things. They come to school, and they're still lonely, because guess what they do in the classroom? I'm teaching my first freshman ever first-year experience this semester. I've got 40 students. About 10 of them graduated from our district. I said I shook your hand. Some of them got a good laugh out of that. But guess what? They show up to class 10 minutes before class starts. We packed in a room, packed tight. Not a single one of them talking to each other. Every single one of them want to go into healthcare. Most of them nursing. I'm like, your whole row is all nursing class. You're going to be in the same classes. Talk to each other. Study together. Talk to each other. So, yeah, the cell phone. Oh, sorry, that's what they're doing. They're on they're this, and I'm like, nobody's staring. So the loneliness, they could still attend and still be lonely because they're doing this when they're at school, because this is how they connect with each other. They don't have that connection. It's the adult that they might connect with, and I think we can all remember that teacher we connected with. But I don't know. It's what you're doing. It is the whole community. So thank you again. It's just unnerving that it's another thing that we have to try to solve to hopefully try to move the needle, because 10%, that's 18 days, right? I guess it has to be right? 18, if they're enrolled from day one to day end. I get it. Yeah, I know. You're like, well, remember how the data's done. I saw that. Dr. May's like, well, so a student that is enrolled from day one to day end that hits that red line has missed 18 days. That means they miss, if they do that every year, an entire school year plus. That means in their K-12, they have missed an entire year of education over their lifetime. And we've got some, I mean, that are way past that 10%. So they're missing probably 2 years, if not more, of their education. So I implore the community and parents and grandparents, your kids need to come to school. Please, 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 so we can provide not only an education, but food and socialization and counseling and social work and nursing and so many other services outside of just education. So please, please, please attend.
Mr. Johnson?
So I think Dr. Brinkman was in my head because I was going to say a lot of the same things. So the main thing that I do want to echo is there is a big attendance difference between those schools, not just the specialty programs, but also in the charter schools, where they provide their own transportation one way or another. And they're usually the ones, for the most part, that have better outcomes. So it just shows that it's not necessarily transportation is an issue. It can be part of one of the issues. However, those people that know that they're going to have to provide their own transportation one way or another to be at that school, those families and that part of the community is prioritizing education over everything else. And we need to, not just as a school district, but in its entire county, that the only way for our kids to get ahead in life, to get that good job, to get the high-paying job. I mean, Hyundai is having issues hiring here locally because they can't do it. They're not finding people who are qualified for it for whatever reason. And the only way to get that qualifications, the only way to get those skills is by showing up, doing the work, and getting the grade.
All right. Mr. Smith had something else.
Just to kind of piggyback off of Dr. Brinkman's comments, I think that he was really speaking to how Savannah-Chatham County Public School System strives to go above and beyond the call of duty. With that, I would like to ask, are we aware of any other districts doing these things, and do they have different methods that they've employed to be successful in this area?
So, actually, I can speak a little bit to that because Dr. Miller-Fields, Mr. Dennison, and I were all at a meeting last week on truancy with juvenile court and community partners. And there is a program and I don't know that it's the city, but it's in Massachusetts. What they do is the first day of school, they visit all of the kids that were truant, that were the most truant before the first day. And they are proactive and they continue with those kids to address all of those reasons why those kids weren't coming to school. And they have great results. So it's something that if you'll talk to Dr. Miller, I can't remember the name of the school system, but if you guys will talk to Dr. Miller-Phillips or Mr. Dennison, yeah. So there are people that are being proactive about it. So.
Communities in Schools is a excellent program. We don't have that in Savannah-Chatham County, but in other districts, Communities in Schools.
Oh, we did.
We did.
We did.
Well,
Yeah,
that program does excellent work around student attendance. I will also say that there are a few districts using artificial intelligence to support attendance and have seen some success with that. So yes, we are studying exemplars. I read about a high school principal in another district that implemented recess at the high school level and is seeing, so I've seen it district level strategies that are positive, all the way down to implementing recess back at the high school level where kids are outside playing kickball again. And that has re-engaged many kids back into school. So, right, I think it can be macro and micro, both at the same time.
Mr. Johnson.
I want to follow up on one more thing that Dr. Brinkman brought up about teachers helping out with a lot of these things with truancy and doing extra work besides just classroom teaching and educating our students. I would like to figure out a way that we can compensate them monetarily for the extra work they're doing, like we do with coaches, because it's just another kind of coach. It might not be on an athletic field, but they are being an education coach for these students.
All right. Thank you very much. This is great. We could spend all day talking about this, but we've got a lot of great ideas. We are running over, but we have 2 more items that we definitely need to get to, so bear with me. Next, we will have our quarterly change order report, and I've been told that this is going to be very brief.
It's in your pamphlet.
Exactly, right.
Okay, thank you. You have been provided the second quarter change order report, and just a couple of brief items regarding it. The majority of these change orders are classified as owner directives. We have been able to do a lot of additional work throughout our projects, and instead of just issuing new purchase orders, we use a change order as a vehicle to add that work to our contractors. Also, you'll see that some of these change orders under the change item amount have a dollar amount, and then under the change contract amount says no. Well, that's when you have a change order within a GMP. It's not a scope change, so the GMP, the change order amount doesn't change, just that contingency change orders were brought into play with those. Every change order over $50,000 has been approved by the board prior to the approval. And again, every change order has gone through a very rigorous review by the Change Control Board prior to bringing them up for owner approval. So with that, I'll answer any questions that they may be on any individual change.
Any questions? All right. Thank
Hi, this is Dion. I have a question.
Hello, Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Hi. Really good discussion in the last section. Thank you, staff, for the data and the report and the innovative approaches. My question on the change order reports is simple, but it's not annotated. I want to make sure I understand it properly. So on page 3, I'm wondering about change order number 11, where we had to make hardware changes that weren't within code. I'm wondering how we designed something that it should have been in code. Do we know what happened with item number 8, the hardware changes to the fire doors for Godley Station, why it wasn't in code?
No, there was a change that was required by the inspector when they came out and did their inspections. And so that happens quite often. You find out that field inspectors come out and they want to see something different than what had been put in and previously approved through permitting the drawings.
I understand, but the code should be consistent even if the inspectors aren't. There's a couple of permitting changes that increase the cost of the contract amount that were all code related. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'm thinking on our design level, we ought to be catching that. We should not be finding that after the construction if we've gotten permitted. But that just may be something that I need to have understanding of and can be explained offline. The items that are on page 4, 21 through 24, there are several field condition, and there are a couple of other ones like this too, where there are change orders that have different numbers for different activities, and it says it changes, so if these are changing the current contract amount?
Yes, they are.
Okay, and will we see what the new contract amount is? Is it just those items added up, added to the current contract amount in the second to the last column?
That current contract amount, the software that we use, eBuilder, when we run the report, it puts in the contractor's current contract amount. Consequently, you will see that same dollar amount for a contractor that has multiple change orders. So that is the final contract amount to date for that particular contractor. And just let me also add that we do run into field change orders. They're not uncommon. Again, when you start construction, you find out that there are situations in the field that are not necessarily picked up in the drawings. Sometimes they uncover something that results in a change order. And that's kind of what happened in the majority of these HVAC projects. And let me also just say, too, we do find, and it's sad, but it's business, we do find that inspectors do come out on sites and they do request changes, their code changes, because they're inspectors, that were not requested or required when the drawings were permitted. And we've got a number of instances where that does happen.
I understand. Well, so the field condition, I understand. We had that issue at Beach when we discovered a 6-foot drain pipe that we didn't know was there, in different athletic fields where the quality of soil is not what it should have been, like we saw at New Hampstead. So field conditions I understood, but the permitting and code I didn't. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Ms. Grabowski.
I will piggyback on Dr. Hoskins-Brown because the one that caught my eye was number 5, the additional landscaping of almost $80,000 that seemed to be after the fact. Is that correct? Or was that during the permit review?
Number 5 for permitting. Yes, there was, in the original documents for that, we had some additional landscaping that was required. When the project was put out for bid, it had not received final permit.
Okay.
Because we tried to obviously get the bid done as quickly as we could, and sometimes the permitting process takes much longer, and then you need to pick those permit comments up in change orders.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next we have our long-range facilities plan phase 2. And let's see how brief we can be.
Before I get started, I want to say this is the board's second or third or maybe fourth look at this. It's a part of my weekly updating. It was formally presented in a CIC meeting, I believe, in the month of July. So I'm hoping the board has some familiarity with this plan. And I want to just state for the record that these recommendations would be coming formal to the board in the month of October. So this is kind of one of those 3 bites at the apple opportunities that you have to make suggestions or changes before a formal recommendation comes forward.
So, long-range facility plan is like a home renovation project, except that instead of one kitchen, I'm doing on 40 kitchens and multiple bathrooms and a few gyms thrown in. And as I was told, to be brief, and that would be the exact opposite of long-range facility plan. Okay. Sorry about that.
All good.
Okay. So in the introduction, I was hearing about the attendance report. So I am going to add another 6 items saying make them inviting for students to come. The first chapter is about a Mercer Middle School facility, which is empty right now, and we are going to convert into CELA and alternative schools. Second is Montgomery Swing Site renovation. It's in design and we'll be starting construction very soon. Third one is Jacob G. Smith. We awarded it, as you know about it, and it will be starting construction in the summer of coming year. We are planning to lease or sell Thunderbolt Elementary School location. Same thing with Whitney Complex, where we are standing today. This one is about closure of Schumann site. It was part of phase 1. And we are now, after all the feedback we received from the community, from the board members, we made all the changes as needed. So this will be the new one that Schumann will be closed in the coming summer, and we will be dividing the students into Juliet Low, A.B. Williams, and H.E. Formey. And as we got the feedback, the Henderson Formey will become from pre-K to first grade, A.B. Williams will be second to fifth grade, and Low will be from pre-K to fifth grade. We discussed this, STEM Academy. We will be building a new school. We had a lot of study done on it. I think the question was asked last time that will the current site, I heard about it, that there is a lot of traffic issues. So my goal is to build it vertical as well as create a geometric pattern where most of the cars dropping and picking them up will be waiting on site itself and cause less of a traffic issue. We are going to be renovating Georgetown K-8 renovation, and the school will be moved to Largo Tibet, which will be renovating now. Coastal Middle School has gone several renovations, but they were all patchwork. We intend to finish it up starting coming summer. Garden City Elementary School will be the one moving to Montgomery Swing site after J.J. Smith comes out. Garrison K-8, I heard about the attendance of this school being very positive. So I visited the school yesterday. I visited this morning. I talked to the principal. It has a waiting list of between 300 to 400. The building is very old. It's not in a good shape. I went back and looked at our FCI report and realized that the original building, its remaining life is only about 17% left. So why should I renovate it? So I would like to build a brand new Garrison K-8 also. We have 13 acres. We'll keep the Yamakra Center and build a nice, beautiful school, if that's okay with you guys. If you look at the report again, I mean, I just reached the conclusion only this morning. That's why I'm talking about it right now. Any questions about that?
I am sure there are a few.
Yes, sure.
I'll start with Ms. Hall. And
I certainly endorse your recommendation. Ever since we built Yamakra, I always felt like Garrison looks like the poor stepsister across the street. So, Dr. Watts, that'd be a go, boy.
So my decisions are based purely on engineering basis, basically. So I am going to ask an architect to go give me a report, just like we did that at STEM Academy. First, I reached the conclusion, then I shared with my team. Once they all agreed, then we will go to them. But I was looking at the report. I think it was a total miss by capital projects team. I will take the blame of it because I am part of the team. So if you look at this chart and you see the big orange, that life is already expired. So why would I do a renovation of a house which is in bad shape? Because basically it'll be not money wasted. And I won't be get get the life out of it, which I would get it from a new building.
Dr. Howard Hall?
Yes, I'd just like to just remind myself that I was the Title I program manager for that school before it became Garrison School of Arts, so it's been there for a while. And you mentioned about this, the land and the space, and you mentioned also the wait list, so hopefully we have more
Yes.
seat time for more students to be able to attend
If we
Garrison.
are going to build it another one, I would like to see basically no waiting list. Build it accordingly.
Mr. Kachmar, and then Ms. Grabowski. Then
And sorry for the surprise I threw in.
When was Garrison built?
It was built in 1992, and when we saw the recent rains, the water barrier which they put in the building, it broke. So lots of classrooms are leaking water in when it rains. Even the gym was leaking. So we fixed the gym part, but it is a lot of work, a lot of money being wasted on something.
So, in the scheme of things, that's, for a building, that's not really that old.
Thank you.
So that's a little, like, I'm struggling a little bit with that, because that's really not that old. I understand that we need to do what needs to be done. And so
Yes.
please don't hear me
Oh,
differently on that. But I wonder if maybe it's an expansion of the scope of the renovation or a gut and redo versus a complete tear down and rebuild for a building that's, was built in the 90s. Anyways, I think this is something we're probably going to need a lot more information on.
No worries.
And one of the things that we've talked about with our FCI report is it is obviously it is a data-driven report, as it should be. It does not always account for nuances within a school building for a building that is designed to meet a specific purpose. So I don't know if any of and sometimes that counts against the school. Like, for example, the classroom size can count against a school when the classroom size may be that way because of either our standards or because of standards that meets. So I think we need to do a little bit more of an in-depth analysis on that FCI number. I'm not saying I just need a lot more information to understand the recommendation.
This school was built as an elementary school, and it's now being used as a K-8 and a specialty school. And in my visit this morning, the media center was being used as a classroom. The part of the cafeteria was being used as a classroom. The gym is not the right size for a K-8 school, so it has lots of negatives. I don't think, we should not have waited this long, but it is what it is.
So, Mr. Kachmar, then Dr. Brinkman.
I'll just say I agree with Ms. Grabowski. We need more data.
Yes.
I want to look at other reports. There are 100-year-old buildings that were made out of concrete, steel, and cinder block that you strip down to the core and redo finishes, and it's going to be in better shape than a building built in the 90s or 15 years ago that's like we did in some schools. We put up drywall in elementary hallways. So just because you tell me it's old, I need more data. We need to look at the facilities condition report. I can name 10 schools in the district that are operating as something other than what it was originally designed to be.
Yes.
Islands is a middle school.
Yes.
Coastal is an elementary school. Those are two just come to mind quickly, but they're functioning. So I'm not opposed to a new Garrison. I am opposed to making a snap knee-jerk decision right now on limited data, and you're showing us stuff from up there that we don't have. So I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not supporting it right now either.
Yes.
A comment on the STEM project. I don't have strong feelings about the specifics of how you're going to rebuild. I raised before, I'm open to looking elsewhere because it is a choice school. It's not a neighborhood school. If we rebuild there, I'd rather not buy land. So if we rebuild there, that's fine. I will reiterate what I've said for the last 3 years. From feedback from the school, please don't get rid of the sports field that is there.
Yes.
Previous people in facilities have said we're getting rid of that. So I'm just going to say that every time STEM comes up. Please don't, I like the idea of creative angling to get more traffic in there.
Yes.
As a parent who spent 3 years going there, I would appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
And then on the first couple of slides, I know this is a third bite at the apple, but as I said at the retreat, how much I support this current plan is contingent on what we do with 208 and what we do with the new administrative location. Because, for example, we can locate some of these facilities in 208 if we renovate that for administrative purposes, and we can sell or divest or lease more of our properties. So until I see plans around 208 and our administrative headquarters, that's going to drive my decision-making on this. Thank you.
Dr. Brinkman.
On the Garrison, that's just a wrench thrown into some gears. And I can say now, I won't support a rebuild, hearing it right now and wanting to vote on it in October, because it hasn't been spoken of prior to today. And we've got plenty of elementary schools that became K-8 schools that never really worked wonderfully, Georgetown being one of them. And then I'll follow up with Mr. Kaczmar's comments about STEM. I hope that we're actually going to utilize the 2 pieces of land that attach to that canal. So if you pull that picture back up, slide 10, you've got a triangle that we aren't using right now on the actual school side of STEM, and that one's I think that one's 2 acres. And then on the other side of that canal, it's not in this photo, we've got another almost 2 acres of land that we own. And then if you look in the very upper left corner of that triangle that you can see, there's like another almost half acre of city property that hasn't ever been utilized, that it would be lovely to be able to see if the city would let us have that. That's a field, that half an acre for a field house that, supports the field and doesn't have to be in the main footprint of the school. So I hope we're going to utilize the land that we've owned. I don't know what that looks like on that canal side, but we've got a couple acres there that have just sat, vacant. So I hope that that's part of the plan, is how do we utilize all of the land that we own there? If not, we don't need to be landowners just to hold on to land. Somebody else might want to buy it. So thank you.
Okay. Ms. Hall?
Well, I see I have a lot of diplomacy ahead of me in the weeks and months ahead. But I just want to remind all of us that it's not always, how dilapidated the building is only. We have such a fabulous program going on there that we have over 300 children wanting to be there. So if we could, expand that school to accommodate those children, I'm thinking of lots of kids who never would dream of having that experience who could have it. So I'd like us to think of programmatic avenues, not just the, does the water leak enough for, that kind of thing, but it's in that is our premier arts school. Would a new school that accommodated 300 more kids really be a boon for our community? That'll be the way I'll be approaching each of you as we go out for lunch and we talk about this.
All right, Ms. Grabowski.
Are we moving into comments just overall, or do you have other slides? Because I have a,
So, yes.
because my comment is further down the road if you want me to wait.
Okay. So let me finish this quickly. So the next one is Hubert Middle School renovation. It is in design right now. We will be starting hopefully soon. West Chatham Elementary School, West Chatham Middle School, as I informed earlier, they're right next to each other. We're going to build a small portable units for one unit, and we'll do renovation one wing at a time. And West Chatham, we are still looking for the land. Of course, we are testing a couple of places. And as soon as we like one, we will be coming to you guys for purchase. And Port Wentworth is being
Sonny, could you go back? Because I want to be able to share with the public the lands that we have looked at for the land purchase in West Chatham County, so that folks will understand that we are doing work to the best of our ability to locate optimal space and suitable land. We thought we had a couple of properties that were going to bear out positive, that we would, be viable, and there are wetlands and unsuitable soils at those places. But that data there will demonstrate that 15 properties have been reviewed, and we will continue to review until we find a suitable location.
And now back to questions.
Okay, Ms. Grabowski.
So I have shared this concern already with the superintendent, but just so my other board members are aware, for Port Wentworth, I am not at all in favor of paving for buses at Port Wentworth. That school is located in the middle of a neighborhood. It's in a community that is surrounded by industrial and is doing everything it can to be able to sustain residential housing within Old Port Wentworth. And I think we need to be respectful of that community and find somewhere else for our buses.
Anyone else? All right, so let me reiterate that this is an information meeting only. We do not take votes during this meeting. Anyone else?
No votes, but a lot of notes.
Oh, I like that. No votes, but a lot of notes. All right. I will accept a motion to go into executive session. So moved. Been moved by Dr. Brinkman, seconded by Ms. Hall. All in favor? Yep. Thank you very much.
Aye.
Thank you.